My joke got out of hand. I handcuffed my husband to the radiator and got loud with my neighbor upstairs. I handcuffed my husband to a radiator and got loud with my neighbor while he listened to everything. I am the world's biggest fool and cheat because who in their right mind thinks sleeping with their neighbor while her husband listened as if it were a sane idea? My joke got out of hand, and now I am the one who is being served divorce papers like a hooker on a calm hook. I know it's messed up, but I can assure you I never planned for things to go that far. I cheated, but it was meant to be a prank. This whole thing is super messed up to the extent that I think my marriage is over, so I freaked out and now I'm here to ask if I can undo what I did or at least reduce the glaring consequences that are coming my way. It all started from my husband and my obsession with pranks. I'm not sorry about this. I love pranks, and so does my husband. As it happens, we met each other through a big prank that was organized by our mutual friends. We never in a million years imagined that a prank would end up sending the both of us to court for divorce. I'm now a cheater who is being tagged as loose and might possibly not have access to my husband ever again. Did I mess up? Yes, I did. How did I do it? I'll tell you that now I can't reveal our real names, so I'll be going by the name Lila while my husband will be Desmond. Don't judge me because this is the best I can come up with. Desmond and I have been married for close to 2 years now and we dated for 4 years throughout our time together. We play pranks on each other and have fun. Our friends call us the Gen Z couple because we're always active. So, here's the lowdown. Desmond is 31 and an attorney. I've always been proud to show off how smart my husband is. He's always been busy. He worked hard to get to where he is now, and he likes to have fun whenever he gets the chance. I went to film school and thought I was going to be the next Angelina Jolie, but it didn't work out, so I just did little gigs and plays. I stopped once I got married. This information is helpful because it just tells you how Desmond and I are a little crazy, but I think I may have gone a little far this time. I've never seen my husband this angry in my entire life. I handcuffed him to a radiator and made him listen to me and my neighbor sleeping together, but things got out of hand. I love pranks. I've always loved them. I've always loved April Fool's Day because it's the perfect opportunity to play a prank on someone and have a good excuse for doing so. Desmond and I made it a tradition to come up with something crazy every year. Unfortunately, we've been going through a rough patch in our relationship recently. Desmond has been really busy recently at work. The firm has a lot of cases and controversies to clear, which has left him tired and busy. I know what you're thinking, I'm a housewife, so I shouldn't complain. My husband is just not that into me at the moment. I thought it would be a good idea to get Desmond to be crazy about me again by getting intimate with our neighbor. I needed a reaction from him and I wanted him to feel like he was neglecting me. I thought it would be a good idea to remind him of just how crazy we used to be. I wanted it to be a wild prank and also something that would ease his stress at work. I don't have any romantic feelings towards my neighbor. I just thought he would be the best person for the prank because he already said that I brushed it off and even spoke to my husband about it. He got angry and wanted to confront the neighbor, but I let him know that it was nothing serious and there was no reason to be dramatic. When I suddenly had the idea of pranking Desmond, the best person I could think of was the neighbor. He's a single guy with a lot of time on his hands. To be honest, at first I just wanted to kiss my neighbor. I never actually planned to do anything crazy. For reference, I'll be calling my neighbor Collins. As I said, it was never my intent to have anything serious to do with Collins, but when I got involved with him, things changed. I had to start planning for April Fool's Day like 2 months early. I knew I couldn't just wake up one day and tell a grown man I needed to use him to prank my husband, so I decided to approach Collins and tell him of my plans first. Let me just let you all know that. It wasn't easy to approach him. After all, he told me he had feelings for me, and I'd let him know that I wasn't interested. So, going back to ask him to help me prank my husband took a lot of guts. I also didn't want him to get any idea that I had secret feelings for him. I didn't want to get involved with Collins on a personal level. I just wanted to ask him to help me with a prank. But things took an unexpected turn. When I first met Collins, he seemed unsure about the idea. I could tell he wasn't happy about it. I could tell he was still angry with me for what I did at the beginning, but I was kind of desperate, so I just endured his rants. Now I know how desperate I was because why did it have to be him? Please don't judge me, guys. You don't know how hard it is to want to fix a relationship without knowing how my relationship. I'd always had a playful relationship with Desmond, so I just wanted to keep up that same energy and see where it went. I love pranks and he did too, so I thought kissing the neighbor would do the trick, but Collins was the wrong person to pick. I ended up learning him the hard way. I shouldn't have picked Collins to help me prank my husband. He took advantage of my weakness when I told him we were just going to kiss. He wanted Desmond to be horrified and get the biggest shock of his life. Collins brought up another issue, but for context, let me explain that I wasn't trying to make my husband jealous or angry. The whole point of a prank is to make someone see something they don't expect, and that's exactly what I wanted to do. But then Collins started using my head. He started calling me over to his place whenever Desmond was away. I was away on business, with the excuse that we needed to plan the prank as a housewife without a job. I stupidly listened to him and went to see him whenever he asked. I'm really embarrassed that I even had the audacity to go to meet him. I took the prank too seriously, and that's where I am now. I should have kept a tighter rein on myself and tried harder to resist temptation. It wasn't really tempting at first because when I kept going to see Collins, I didn't really have any bad intentions. All I really wanted to do was see him and speak to him casually. I never imagined that he would. First, he started talking about how kissing wasn't going to be the best way to get my husband's attention. He gave me a few ideas and made me think that the prank I had in mind wasn't a good idea. I started off just ignoring him and telling him about Desmond's schedule. I made sure we were ready for that day, but as time went on, I was influenced by him. Collins was just too friendly and sneaky with me, but I was so focused on doing something crazy for April Fool's Day that I never considered what he was doing. As expected, I got too caught up. I was really taken with him and his corny ways. We started talking way too often and it almost felt like we had become friends. I didn't really like the way things were going, but I never imagined that things would go out of hand. Desmond and I had a strain in our relationship, according to him, due to his firm he was losing cases, and it was really affecting him. In fact, it inspired me to keep up with my plan of pranking him. I just imagined that doing something crazy and worth remembering would take his kind of work for some time and give him a reason to relax and get back to his. The more stressed Desmond was at work, the more I felt motivated to make our little April Fool's Day tradition a day to remember. Desmond was always busy staring at his phone and trying to crack down on different cases, so I got more worried. I know I might get judged for not being able to help him out, but it's not I was worried that having 2 different majors was going to be a problem for us. I was feeling stressed and it seemed like my marriage was suffering as a result of everything that was going on. I decided to do something to take his kind of things, so Collins and I met up more often and things started getting out of hand. Collins became like a pesky fly that was always buzzing around, trying to get my attention, even when I wasn't ready for it. The worst part was that he never hesitated to come to the house, even when he knew I was busy. I knew Desmond might be home, and I didn't like all the things he was doing, but I told myself I had to put up with it because I needed his help. Long story short, it was finally April Fool's Day. To be honest, guys, when I said things got crazy, trust me, they did. I'm not talking about just casual crazy, I'm talking I might be a wild, energetic girl, but I've never done the things Collins told me to do in my entire life. Desmond and I have a crazy, intimate life, and it's always been one adventure or the other, but at that point things went too far. I'd heard from a friend that people started using radiators during intimate moments, and that it would be a nice way to have fun after I pranked Desmond. I spoke to Collins about it because he was in on the prank. He gave me some ideas, but I decided to do something else instead. I thought it would be fun to handcuff Desmond to a radiator while I went upstairs with Collins. I had read a lot of books that spoke about things like that, and the outcome was always a draft and a fun experience, so I imagined myself in the same situation and thought it would be nice to do the same with my husband. We already had a radiator in the house because we had used it during the early months of our marriage, but of course we had outgrown it. We just did things like that during the early years of our marriage and then we got too hurt to keep up. I suppose it's fair to say that we got tired of the honeymoon period, but I wanted to do something big, so I had to get ready to use the radiator again. I decided to plan that aspect on my own because I just felt like it wouldn't be right to involve Collins in that aspect. I wanted to draw boundaries, even though I already knew there were a lot of boundaries that had already been crossed from the beginning of things. Now, 2 days to April Fool's Day, Desmond asked if I wanted to go out on that day. I told him no because I already had something planned. He asked if I was sure and then said yes. He told me he was willing to take a day off from work on that day because he wanted to spend time with me, since it had been a thing in our relationship. I told him I didn't feel like going out and that I would prefer it if we just stayed home. I also advised him not to take a day off work because I knew I needed time to set up everything that day and I didn't want him to be home and spoil it all. I just wanted him to come back from work normally but then get surprised. But trust me, guys, things didn't end up going as smoothly as it sounds. As it turned out, things got even worse. I ended up feeling like the April Fool. I was left feeling traumatized because everything I had planned turned out to be nothing but a complete letdown. Instead, I ended up cheating on my husband in the worst way possible. Before I go on, I should say that I had changed my mind about the prank being. I decided to do something wild and get intimate with Collins, even though I might try to deny it. I'd had the intention to cheat on Desmond. That's what the prank was about. In my head, it sounded right because I'd concluded that it would just end up being a one-time thing and it was not going to be anything serious. I was already too close with Collins, and his corny ways were making me think straight. What did I expect to happen? Did I think Desmond would be okay with me sleeping with our neighbor? All these thoughts are just coming now, at the wrong time. None of these thoughts came when I actually needed them. I feel like the world's biggest fool and cheater right now. That's probably because I really messed up. I should have set my priorities straight and I should have never done what I knew wasn't going to end well. I didn't just do a bad thing, I did a stupid thing. So it went down like this. I planned to sleep with Collins and he was well aware of that fact. In fact, I'm sure he planned it all along and I just fell into it. I was the one who made the mistake of falling for it. I gave in to the idea after just 2 days of thinking about it. This shows that I had been planning to cheat on my husband long before that day. I don't know what made me think of cheating as a perfect prank for April Fool's Day. I set up the radiator after Desmond left for work and got the house ready for what I had planned. I waited for him to get back in the evening before I started the first step. I got him in the mood for all I had planned by reading him and flirting. He was really tired, but because he saw how active I was, he just let me do whatever I wanted to do. That's how I was able to handcuff him to the radiator. The radiator didn't ask me how I got the cuffs because I already had them. He was against it at first because he was really tired and it had been a long time since we did something like that, so he didn't want to stress himself out. However, he wanted to give me some of his time, so that's how I ended up handcuffing him to the radiator. I stayed there flirting. I spent some time with him before telling him to take a minute. I left him there and went upstairs. I was tempted to stop, but I'd already spent so much time perfecting the prank. Plus, when I saw Collins, I realized there was no way I was going to resist. He was dressed in such a way. I knew there was no way I was going to change my mind. That's how I did the bad thing, guys. I was so stupid that I fell for his tricks and just like that I went on with the prank. I didn't just tell him, I made sure Desmond heard us so I'm sure there's no way he didn't hear it. It didn't help that Collins made sure the door was open at that moment. I felt really happy and I was so sure that I thought I was saving my marriage and bringing out the fun side of my husband by giving Desmond a good prank. I had no idea I was just being the biggest fool in the world. When I was done with Collins, I went downstairs to remove the cuffs from Desmond. I had never seen my husband that angry in my life. Desmond looked like he would have pushed me to my death if not for his self-control. I was trying to calm him down and explain that it was a prank, but I was so shocked that I couldn't even believe my own words. I suddenly realized that what I had done wasn't a prank at all. I couldn't believe I'd made my husband do something so stupid. I felt so ashamed that I couldn't even explain myself to him. Sabotaging Desmond didn't even take a moment to call me the biggest mistake he'd ever made. He said I'd made him look like a fool and asked what gave me the nerve to play with his ego. Now that I think about it, How could I have thought handcuffing my husband to a radiator and making him listen to another man sleep with me was going to end well? Of course, I just called him weak and played on his I don't think there's any man on this earth who would accept that. Desmond was extremely angry and went upstairs to give Collins the biggest beating of his life. I could tell that he wanted to hurt me, and he would have hurt me if I was a man. When Desmond came downstairs, he sent me packing immediately. He told me he was deeply disappointed in me and accused me of not being there for him when he was stressed with work. He was stressed at work and asked how I could watch him struggle with his career. Instead of helping or trying to ease his stress, I came up with ways to embarrass him and make him look weak. His words really hurt me because I could see how disappointed he was, and I could clearly see that he regretted everything about being with me. I tried to make him understand that it was just a joke that went too far, but he threw me out of the house. It's been really tough for me to eat or sleep. I've been thinking about everything that's happened nonstop and I'm not okay with it. I can't believe that after all the stress I went through for the prank, I ended up putting a strain on my relationship with Desmond. He's refused to see or speak to me. He sent me divorce papers barely 2 weeks after. He's even instructed his colleagues not to let me see him. I've been at his firm every working day since I left, but Desmond won't back down. I hurt him and his ego so much that it feels like we were never married. It was just a joke that went too far. I still love him so deeply, but I guess I have now. I've realized that tying my husband, who is a grown man, to a radiator and sleeping with someone who had expressed interest in me before is never going to end well. I've also realized that it's never a good idea to test a marriage just because you're interested in exploring things and doing something stupid. I'm utterly disappointed in myself, and that's why I'm no longer ready to keep on fighting. I've signed the divorce papers because I know there's no way back. I know Desmond won't forgive, and I know he'll never settle for less. The last time I saw him was from a distance. I know we'll meet in court during the divorce, but it's clear he doesn't want anything to do with me. Collins tried reaching out, but I made it clear I told him it was just a silly mistake and that I'll never make the same mistake again. I'll never forgive myself for what I did, and having anything to do with Collins is going to hurt me more. I had a wonderful marriage, but I let myself play with it. Desmond and I were doing great until I failed to be with him when he needed me. Instead, I decided to cheat on him. At the end of the day, I guess the true joke is on me.